Hello and God bless you. Thank you for coming back for part two. I'm going to get right into it because I think it's going to be a lengthy video. Um, it's always disheartening to hear a service where the preacher explains the sin of the Garden of Eden as just disobedience. It really just kind of floors me that we can take 3, 4 chapters of Genesis in the beginning of the Bible and talk about how they walked with God, which they did, and they were disobedient, ate some fruit, listened to the serpent lie, which they did, and come up with they were disobedient. It floors me because I've been disobedient. I've been disobedient even after I've been saved. I had a very profound testimony when I was in Iraq, and shortly after that, I had a roommate, and it was the 4th of July. I won't forget it. He came over to my room. He's like, "Hey, come on over and have some drinks with us." And it was some of my guys on my team that I worked with, and it's like, no, no, I'm good. And then I decided to go over there. I was like, I can have, I don't. I'm a believer that drunkenness is obviously a sin, but having a drink or two, which is what I limit myself to, is not a sin. If I go out to dinner, I'll have a beer or maybe two at the very most, and my wife will drive home. But I never go anything over that because I don't want to lose control or be drunk. And I feel two is a good limit for me. And so I'm overseas and they have vodka and everything else, and I end up getting drunk. And I go back to my room, and I'm kind of feeling bad, but I'm like, well, I kind of thought also to myself, I was prideful. I was like, well, I'm okay. I'm saved. You know, I messed up. Oh well. The next morning, I had the worst hangover. And believe me, I've partied my life away in a lot of ways. But I had the worst hangover, and I had guys with jackhammers outside my door, working on concrete and banging on pipes and everything else. And it was one of the worst days of my life. And it was kind of funny. I thought the Lord actually had a sense of humor over it, and ever since then I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to do that. But he didn't. The point being is he didn't damn me to anything more than that, just to set me straight. You know, it was the worst hangover I've had. I felt horrible at the time. But the next day, I was in my Bible and I was reading and repairing myself and repentance and everything else. So, how could eating a piece of fruit in the garden punish us, humanity, for 6,000 years? It does not make sense. Um, it just doesn't make sense. When we understand the gravity of what really happened there, not only do you appreciate the Lord, what He has done even more for us, you begin to understand what this world actually is about. That's what's key. My problem before I was saved was, who's Jesus to me? Okay, so He's a guy that came and died for me. For what? I don't know. And um, it just didn't make sense to me that it was such a easy thing to figure out. Oh, so two people ate some fruit and now we're damned, and this guy comes along and he is crucified for me and my sins. And okay, okay, thanks. Yes, I believe. I mean, there's no heart into that. There's no, oh my gosh, there's no founding, concrete thing to latch onto. But when you understand the depth of what happened in that garden and the result of that, of what happened in the garden, then you appreciate exactly what Jesus has done for you. And that, knowing the truth, is how we're supposed to follow Him and worship Him. Um, Something much more sinister happened in the garden, and a simple word study begins to reveal the truth. The Bible plainly states, 1 John 3:12, that Cain, who was of the wicked one, slew his brother Abel. And then we can go on to we define the wicked one, we go on to Matthew 13:38. We know the tares in the field, mingled with the wheat, are the seed from the wicked one, who is the devil. Okay? And then, of course, Revelation 12 figures it all out for us and says, and the devil is completely identified as the old serpent, the dragon, and, of course, the devil. So we can put all these things together here, these three verses, and just have a fingernail hold of, oh, something's not right here. What does this seed mean? What's this? Who's of the wicked one? Devil. Okay, dragon, devil. Revelation 12, the wicked one, wicked one. And then you start to figure out what the heck just went on in that garden. And then we know if we read this whole parable that the seeds grow together and they look alike. They look alike, but yet come time of the harvest is when they're going to be pulled up and then taken into the fire. So you should start to peel back this onion and want to dig even more just by these three simple verses. Through the Holy Spirit, I did a series a while ago called Forbidden Fruit. This study presented itself after my wife had a dream of a child I was indifferent about. It was a very short dream. I'll tell you about it. It was me and my wife standing at a gurney. This gurney was really metallic looking. That's all I remember, like old 1970s, like cold steel, just ugly gurney. No bedding, no nothing. And this child was on it. And my wife didn't even know she was pregnant at the time, but this child just came out. And this child was on this gurney. And we both sat there looking, and she said, "What are we going to name him?" And I didn't answer. I just sat there looking at it. I had this dream, and then this study just came out of me like never before. And in that study, I break down a lot of the words and phrases in the exchange during this time period in Genesis where Adam and Eve are taking part in this sin. So I'm not going to go over them here in depth, okay? That would be, words like desired and touched and, all those key phrases that Eve uses about the fruit. That's already done in this study. So if you want to check that out, this is what it looks like on my page there in YouTube. I'm going to briefly cover a few things, but I'm not going to completely take away from this study either. So this is the picture of that cover, all right? We've already discussed the trees and have concluded that the tree metaphor is the reality of what we choose, the pathway, whether it's the fleshly pathway, which was the tree of knowledge and good and evil, or whether it's the spiritual pathway of life to Jesus Christ. He is the way, the truth, and the life. I believe it was a spiritual fornication and a physical fornication with the enemy through that gateway of that tree is the predicament that we're into now. Taking part in the tree of knowledge of good and evil destroyed God's plan. Okay, but always understand God is it's not like his plan was destroyed. It's part of his plan, but this is the rough part, okay? It's a reconciliation is what it is, to bring us back to him, okay, for what happened in heaven. I'm not going to get into too depth here, but I will say this. We are spirits before in heaven we existed. In the book of Psalms, it talks about this being the land of forgetfulness, okay? Let me pull that up for you. Sometimes to sneak in little tidbits of information here and there that kind of get you thinking. And this is no different. All right, this is Psalm 88:12, and it says, "Shall thy wonders be known in the dark, and thy righteousness in the land of forgetfulness?" What is the land of forgetfulness? Well, that's for you to decide. I think it's the earth. Now, there is a book called the Pistis of Sophia. How I take extra biblical text is this way, okay? I've read the Bible. I'm on my third time, almost done with the third time. I know the Bible fairly well, okay? I'm not going to say fairly well because it's a vast, huge book. But I've read it first, and I've obtained understanding through the Holy Spirit with it. And I have read extra biblical texts. The Book of Enoch, Adam and Eve, The Cave of Treasure, some of these books, okay? I always bounce it off the Bible for truth, okay? I call it nice to know information. That's interesting. Is it proven in the Bible? Can this be proved in the Bible? Like Enoch definitely can be proven in the Bible. So anyway, um, with that said, okay, it does talk about this cup of forgetfulness in Pistis Sophia. And it says, and straightway, this is the Lord talking, and straightway when that soul shall drink of the cup of, it forgetteth all the regions to which it hath gone, and all the chastisements in which it hath traveled, and the cup of water of forgetfulness becometh body outside the soul. Now, he says that cup of water of forgetfulness becomes body outside the soul. Think about when we're born, we're in this body of fluid, aren't we? Called amniotic fluid. And can't we get the word amniotic from the word amnesia? Forgetfulness? In this amniotic fluid? So, again, nice to know information. I don't take it for gospel truth, solid hard fact, but it fits with some of the things. And, there's an old Hebrew tradition that says an angel puts her finger on the lips of a child, and that's why you get that indentation right below your nose to forget all the things of heaven. So I believe that we existed in heaven before, and our spiritual beginnings were there and are playing out here on earth in the physical. So anyway, just something to think about on your own. But it is there, okay? I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, let's keep going. Of course, that destroyed the plan of teaching, announcing, and bringing the good news, just like what we saw with the trees were. It would damper Satan's plans. That said, God knew this would happen, and the result is being able to place judgment on those accountable, the fallen. Lucifer, his fallen angels, the 1/3 that fell from heaven to the earth. Jesus would come, pay the price for our sin, although he had no sin himself, bring the good news, heal the sick, set the captives free, and give sight to the blind. Okay, that's out of Luke 4:18 and also in Isaiah. Okay, just a couple things here on some wordplay. Fruit in the Bible is para. It means to produce, to bring forth, reward, offspring, progeny in the womb. Now, when we accept this as truth, it not only suppresses in some sort of gross doctrine, then verses like this begin to make sense. And you can look in the Bible and find all these. Okay, no pity on the fruit of the womb, not to spare children. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and she said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? These are children. Right here, children, fruit, offspring, progeny, actions. Okay, it also goes to offering. Okay, we'll get into that a little later. Fruit has seeds. Okay, like right here. Zera is generally the word used for seed. Fruit, plant, carnal, child, sowing time. Posterity, this means future seed. This is the word used in Daniel 2:44, and they will mingle with the seed of men. Disseminate, plant, bear, conceive. The seed was implanted into Eve through fornication, work, labor, but then she bare the fruit from her work. Two distinguished trees, one of spirit and the desires of the flesh, the other. Remember the story of David and Bathsheba. David saw, he inquired about her, and then he laid with her. All right, and then the result was death. He sent her husband to the front lines and had him killed. The end state here is also death, spiritual death, and then a physical death of the flesh. These are other references you can look up. Even parental care in the medical field, if there's anyone in the medical field watching the video, if you would comment. Parental care is usually called pericare, which means the washing of the genital area. All right, this is used in the hospitals. Okay, pericare goes right back to fruit. I mean, we cannot deny this in our face truth. In the study Forbidden Fruit, I go over the subtle vocabulary like I discussed. Okay, interchange of the sin. I don't want to rehash all that study or restate everything here. With that in mind, you can look up some of these words in the Strong Concordance and I think what'll happen will be completely obvious. Neither shall you touch it, lest you die. A woman saw the tree was good, pleasant to the eyes. This goes back to lust. This goes back to lay. This obviously goes back to fornication. Conceived, she bare again, means to continue in labor, which goes back to this here superfecundation, which is the fertilization of two separate eggs by two different fathers. Okay, she had sexual intercourse with the enemy and came back and brought the fruit to her husband. Okay, and they had intercourse after she had intercourse here. She went back to Adam and had intercourse with him and bare Cain and Abel. Cursed is he who hangs from a tree. The Bible tells us our enemy is cursed. The Lord states this in Genesis 3:15. Mutual hatred between him and the woman, between her seed and his seed. Two different seeds. I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between thy seed and her seed. How is Jesus cursed? Of course, he isn't any longer. He took upon our sin, and when he did that, that's when he was cursed. He took on all that sin of the world. He literally bore them all. He became sin on that cross. This is why he thought the Father had left him. He didn't, of course, okay, but this was all the plan in accordance with the Father. His sacrifice is what gives us the freedom from our fruit curse, okay? Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. Cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. He bare our own sins on his body on that tree. When it comes to the fruit, this is where we maybe get tripped up. When God told Adam, when you eat, paraphrasing, of that fruit, that day you will surely die. But Adam lived for 900 plus years. So how is the Lord stating truth here? It is truth because the Lord sees with spiritual eyes, not fleshly eyes. Adam spiritually died that day. It is speculated that their light bodies became dim at that point. The extra biblical texts I've read suggest that they became fearful during the nighttime, being scared and hiding themselves. The sun, when it came up, they thought they were going to burn to death. The animals didn't interact with them like they were before. They craved food, they craved water. So being born into this world is a curse. It is a curse to be born into the world. This is why you have to be born again of spirit. You were brought into the world under a curse. It's that simple. When we look at trees, we come across the Hebrew word etz, which is Strong's word for trees or timber. It comes from the word H6095, atasha, meaning to shut the eyes. Just like the movie, Eyes Wide Shut. So here we have stick, plank, pine, timber, wood to close the eyes, to make them shut. Remember, their eyes were opened when the sin occurred, when she went to that tree. And they realized that they were naked at that point. Again, this Eyes Wide Shut, I never saw the movie. Evidently, it's about some sort of woman having an affair with a Luciferian type secret society. Another word for pit is stone. When we look at a fruit, okay, we're looking at the outside, the flesh, the skin, the pit, the seed. All right, this is the pit. All right, the seed, the stone is what it's going to be called. It's called a drupe or a stone fruit, the outer fleshly part, excuse me, or skin. Right here, the drupe is a hard, lignified stone which is derived from the ovary wall of the flower. Free stone refers to a drupe having a stone which can be removed from the flesh with ease. The flesh is not attached to the stone and does not need to be cut free. Freestone varieties of fruits are preferred for uses that require careful removal of the stone. And this is what Jesus says. Isn't this cool? A new heart I will give you, a new spirit I will put within you, and I will take away the stony heart the stony heart. We are fruit, right? We are cursed, hanging on a tree. We're cursed because we're born spiritually dead. Okay, we're born in this flesh, but until we know Christ and are converted and see in a different light, we are cursed. Born into this flesh, a spirit that's cursed until it finds its way, to Christ. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. But anyway, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit, a new spirit, okay, within you. Because you walk in my statutes, you shall keep my judgments and do them. So it becomes a healing of our DNA, a healing of the spirit that comes in us. We are no longer spiritually dead, eternally dead. You're born eternally dead. Isn't that crazy to say? But this is us. This is this fruit. I'll take out your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Also called a pit. How many times do we see a pit in the Bible? Take them back, or coming out of the pit, back into the pit. It's a common theme. It's also in masonry. So what Satan desires is that you keep this heart of stone and not change it out for a heart of flesh, but that you keep this heart of stone so he can easily, in any direction, cut it and fine grain it and form it. I got ahead of myself. I'm sorry. A free stone is so named because it can be freely cut in any direction. How about another word for this would be manipulate, right? He can easily manipulate you, how you think, how you feel, how you act, by what you watch, what you hear, what you see, what you take in. MTV, Desperate Housewives, horrible movies, music. All this is how he takes this stone, free stone, in you and shapes it. Jesus says he's going to remove it and give you another one. He wants to shape your flesh, shape this stone, this hard stone that's in you. It can easily be cut in any direction, in particular fine-grained sandstone or limestone. And then it goes back to what we just talked about, a stone fruit where the pit is easily separated from the flesh when the fruit is ripe. And what does Jesus say? And if you will make an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it out of hewn stone. For if you lift up a tool upon it, you have polluted it. Neither shall you go up. Okay. Exactly what he's talking about here. Letting the enemy formulate who you are. Letting this world manipulate you and conform you. The Bible says, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what was good and acceptable and the perfect will of God. So in other words, don't let the enemy come here with his tools and shape and form you on who you are and what you're supposed to be, but instead let God take this out of you, give you a new one, and then put a new spirit in you and be taken out to fashion. Right? Exactly what that enemy's doing with his tools. Those are his tools. MTV, all that stuff, all that garbage, political debates, all that crap. It's all crap. When we are born into this world, we're immediately put under the spell of this world. Satan begins immediately using his tools to form and shape our stone or pit that's in our fruit. We succumb to the laws of this world through just about every facet known to man, including the religious system. Just as his word says, he has to change our heart so that we can see through his light. Denying the flesh and not conforming to the world and its desires is constant work of faith, obedience, and prayer. In short, we are born fleshly alive, but spiritually dead. Recently, I came across a passage, and this is interesting, and guys, I have no hard thoughts on this yet, but I thought this is absolutely, I've never read this. I've read this obviously, but I've never sunk in as it did recently. I came across this passage of scripture, which is Leviticus 12. Leviticus 12 suggests that childbirth is a sin, The last verse in this chapter sums up the chapter, but look and read the entire chapter before you condemn me, please. I'm going to pull it up here. I'm going to pull it all up here for you to see. Leviticus 12. Very short chapter. And it says, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but basically you have the Lord saying to Moses, speak to the children of Israel, when a woman has conceived seed and born a man-child, we're going to talk about this word here, born a man-child, then she shall be unclean, according to the days of separation of her infirmity, she shall be unclean. On the 8th day, okay, we talked about the 8th day, all right, Adam and Eve, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised, and shall continue the blood flow. Okay, continues on. If she bear a maid child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks. Purification, going through the purification process. When the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation of the priest, who shall offer before it the Lord and make an atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the issue of her blood. Now, is this, I have no idea, but this is very, very interesting. And it goes on, if she doesn't have a lamb, then she can bring 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons. Anyway, if anyone has any more ideas on this, please post them. But I have somewhat of an idea. And I think what it's saying is, again, like we talked about, we're born into a death. We're born into a spiritual death. We are spirits brought forth in the flesh that must reconcile through spiritual rebirth. Right here. We take the birth of our children too lightly. Okay, now I don't have kids, so I can't condemn people that do have kids. However, God is essentially giving us them back to us to be entrusted keepers for them to be brought back to the Lord. Okay, so in other words, these spirits that are coming through the flesh, God is giving us a commission to raise those children in an offering to the Lord to bring them and reconcile them back to Him. And this ain't happening. God has given them us to essentially bring them back. As parents, we are entrusted keepers of the children to bring them back to the Lord, to raise them according to His word. Children have become idols to their parents and possessions of their parents. This is a very, 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 very bad thing that's happening in this world. And you can just Google that phrase and you'll see all kinds of stuff. I'm not trying to be condemning, but there are only 2 paths in this world: the fathers and the enemies. The earth is set up in such a way that there's a balance here to make a choice, all right, to follow one or the other, and there is no middle ground. So these children have become, instead of what parents should be doing and raising their children and offering them to the Lord and giving them to the Lord, they have become extensions of possessive things to their parents, and it's not their purpose. Okay, it's not their purpose. So when you study man-child, a man-child is an offering up to God. All right, we learned this in Revelation 12 is a good place to look at. I'll talk about it a little bit here. So man-child is an offering up to God. These mothers give God full authority in their child's lives. Okay. A good example of this is found in Samuel and Jeremiah. I want you to listen to the tone in the verses of these references. And she vowed a vow. This is Hannah with Samuel. 1 Samuel 1. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt look upon my affliction and your handmaid, and remember me, and not forget my name, or forget your handmaid, but will give me a man-child, I will give him to you all the days of his life. And Hannah answered, and skips down a little bit further into the chapter. I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before God. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he should be lent to the Lord. See how she's given him back? And she couldn't have children. She couldn't bear children. But she said, if you will give me a child, I will give him to you. And she was afflicted because she couldn't have a child. Back then it was a very bad thing not to have children, not to be able to get pregnant. But she says, if you give one to me, I will give him back to you. And this is why Samuel was such a man of God, is because he was offered up in such a way that God used him to make, to help David, Israel. Great prophet. Another great one, Jeremiah. Jeremiah was, oh man, breaks your heart when you read about Jeremiah. And he says here, cursed be the day where I was born. Let it not be the day where my mother bare me be blessed. Cursed be the man who brought tidings to my father, saying, a man-child is born unto you, making him very glad. He wanted nothing to do with the day he was born. Job the same way. Okay, when you read about Job and in his man-child reference. Wherefore I came forth out of the womb to see labor and sorrow, that my days should be consumed with shame. Let me ask you a question here. Well, let's keep going. So in Revelation 12, the woman who was clothed with the sun and travail giving birth, again, labor, sorrow, cursed ground, pains of delivery. This man-child does not stay with her. He ascends to the throne of God. Remember, the child is fruit, an offering to the Father. All right, this goes back to first fruits, being the first fruit offerings to the Father that we're seeing. And she brought forth, before we go further, does this sound a lot like Adam and Eve? Cursed, sorrows, sorrowful spirit, affliction. Kind of does. Labor and sorrow to work the earth. Bondservants. Back to Revelation 12. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to his throne. And she goes off into the wilderness. Okay. Revelation 14. These are they which are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These are the redeemed among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. And their mouth was found no guile. This is all about, in Revelation 12, connecting this man-child to Revelation 14, I believe. Let's keep going here. The enemy will counterfeit everything that the Lord is doing in an evil, disgusting way. He too wants offering of children, just as the Father. We see this now in a horrific way in New York. And I believe I just read that 7 other states have followed suit, doing the same exact thing. It's something you can check out. The enemy, through disguise and manipulation and the power of his kingdom to manipulate the minds of people into thinking that it's okay to abort children on the altar of convenience. And that's exactly what it is. Exactly what this is, the altar of convenience. I can't close without saying a few more things. As Cain and Abel were the first 2 born into this world, Cain, being the eldest, has the rightful inheritance of the world. They want the world, the flesh, the things of this world. The descendants of Cain are your presidents. They're your political leaders. They're in Hollywood. They're the ones leading the medical field, the educational field, our food supply, all these different things. And they are bent, just like as it was in Cain and Abel's time, they are bent on the destruction of the Abels of this world. Okay? There are 2 seeds here on this earth, and it is a Cain and Abel, cannibalistic world that we live in. The elder is out for the destruction of the younger. It's no secret that cannibalism has become exposed in this world. If you disagree, please do some research into this. Hollywood is coming out talking about cannibalism and cannibalism restaurants even. And listen to some former Illuminati whistleblowers. They will tell you everything that happens behind those closed doors. The Bible is not clear on how Cain killed Abel. However, some biblical texts state that it was a stone. We just talked about a stone, a heart of stone that he used. Doesn't that now make perfect sense? This is the reality, folks. This is why we need Jesus Christ. He heals. He heals our corrupted DNA and gives us a new heart. God bless. If I continue this study, it's going to be on Cain and Abel, and we'll see where the Lord takes it from here. God bless you all, and thank you for watching.